Good evening. It's 5:30, and we will convene our fifth meeting of the San Jose State University Special Task Force on Racial Discrimination. I'm Judge Cordell, and I'm the chair of the task force. We're going to have introductions, and we'll start with Anthony Ross.
All right, good evening. I'm Tony Ross. I'm the Vice President for Student Affairs, California State University, Los Angeles.
Maria Luisa Lanís, faculty member, San Jose State University, Department of Sociology and Interdisciplinary Social Science.
Chris Cox, lecturer, faculty member, Department of Sociology and Interdisciplinary Social Sciences.
Bernadette Shane, former CSU faculty trustee and faculty emerita from Humboldt State University.
Diana Zen, a fifth-year nursing student.
Delorme Maquistobal, alumni, and the Director of the Office of Human Relations for Santa Clara County.
Can everyone who is in the audience hear everything? If not, just raise a hand, and then that's a signal to kind of bring it up for everybody, okay? Thank you. We had one hand raised. All right.
Gabriela Gonzalez, fourth-year Justice Studies major.
Gabriel Rodriguez, sociology student and AS Director of Intercultural Affairs.
Good evening. Rick Callender, Vice President, California-Hawaii State Conference of the NAACP.
Gary Daniels, fourth year, political science major, philosophy, African American studies minor.
I'm Marcos Pizarro, Chair of Mexican American Studies.
Ellen Lynn, Director of Counseling Services.
All right, thank you. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess 4 people who are not yet here. Hopefully they will be here. An agenda, we sent out an agenda earlier this week. Actually, I think it was yesterday. And we will start off with hearing some remarks from Dr. Rona Halualani. She's not yet here because there was a parking issue. She'll be here shortly to talk about the Inclusive Excellence Diversity Master Plan that was initiated in 2009. We'll then have Q&A among us till 6:15, and then from 6:15 to 7:30, we'll review the remaining 28 recommendations on campus climate and also review the residence life recommendations that we talked about that I hopefully got accurately put in all the edits, and there are a few of them we still need to hash out. As we get started, I sent out an email to task force members about the residence life staffing changes on the campus. And just to reiterate, we're not going to talk about the changes. That means we're going to use our time for something other than that because 2 reasons. One is that all personnel matters are confidential by law. The university cannot give names, cannot give reasons, and cannot say anything about those actions that were taken without violating the law. And secondly, the university has advised not just me, but everyone, because they put out an email, that the changes in staffing and residence life were unrelated to the hate crime incident and unrelated to the issues that we are working on here in the task force. So for that reason, and primarily because everything is confidential, we are not going to have that as a subject of conversation. Before I move forward, anybody have any issues, concerns about that right now? Okay. An article just came out in, it's the San Jose Mercury News, and it said in that article, and actually I have it here, it'll be in tomorrow's paper, but it says that their sources are saying that the reasons these staff changes were made was because of underage drinking. So, anyway, Marcos.
The only comment I had was that if the changes in staffing at all were reflective of a future direction, you know, a change in vision or something like that, it would be really important for us to know that. If it was simply, you know, personnel matters, somebody didn't do their job, then that's a different story.
Well, we don't know.
Yeah.
The implication is that that's the latter, that it was some personal change because of some discipline action. We're moving on. Second, I sent to you all a letter from a San Jose State student who asked that the student's name not be put on the letter. I hope everyone got it. It was emailed to everyone. And it's informative, again, about campus climate issues. Is there anybody that doesn't have the letter, didn't see it? Okay. All right. And Finally, you have before you a document, brief chronology of campus climate issues at SJSU. Today at around 3 o'clock, thinking about this task force meeting, I was just confused about what's going on here with campus climate and trying to get a sense of everything. My concern is that we get so busy looking at the trees, we don't see the forest. So while we need to know what happened, we need to get a picture where this university has been and where it has come. So this might not be accurate. I've already had one correction, and thank you, Dr. Rodriguez, Consuelo Rodriguez, who told me that with respect to the 1978 to 1991 tenure of President Gail Fullerton, there was a fifth bullet, which was the creation of the Educational Opportunity Program. There was an office there, so EOP. And I used as my sources, as you can see at the bottom, all of the documents that we've been given and trying to put them all together to see where we have been. And I do think this is, as far as if it's accurate, I think it's very informative. And I will just make a comment here before we begin talking about campus climate, that it's clear to me that leadership sets the tone and really informs campus climate. And if you look as tenures have changed since 1978 to 2011, and look at the changes that have occurred, there was a lot going on between 1978 and 2003, and that was only tenures of 2 university presidents. And then you start to see other things happening. So it's just, I think, critical when we talk about campus climate that whatever recommendations we make, that they be recommendations that change the institution for the better and that are not determined by who sits in the high office, if you know what I mean. So just this is informative, and again, we can bring this in as we talk about these issues. I don't see our speaker here yet. Hi, Peter, want to tell us who you are?
Hello, my name is Peter. I'm a third-year student and vice president of Associated Students.
Okay, thank you. So let's just jump right on in to campus climate, the recommendations, of which there are 28, and then we'll stop to when our speaker arrives, and then we'll pick it back up and then go over our recommendations that we discussed last week. And Marcos, you had your hand up. I don't want to, okay, all right. So here we go. Let me just get them up. All right, there are 28 recommendations, and why don't we do as we did last time? We just go down, knock them out, okay? Recommendation 1, create an Office of Campus Diversity, led by a Vice President for Diversity, who reports directly to the President and whose authority is to coordinate and oversee diversity with respect to students, faculty, staff, and administration. I think it's important to note this recommendation came from Professor Susan Murray, who did the Moye Report, which really kicked off our task force meetings. Okay, and interesting, chronology, there was something like that back in the day. There was an office of, what did they call it then? So, President, okay. There was a special assistant, it was an office for campus climate office. That was a campus climate office within a special assistant reporting directly to the President. Okay, so. All right, so comments. Should we move forward on this recommendation 1?
It's linked to number 10?
Yeah, we're going to do that same kind of thing, and see if they're connected. So recommendation 1 you think is linked to 10, and here is recommendation 10. An Office of Campus Diversity, led by a diversity officer, be established to oversee, manage, and assess the campus-wide bias incident reports and all diversity efforts, including but not limited to the recently created Commission on Diversity, the forthcoming recommendation from the Special Task Force, the Assembly Select Committee, and the task forces to facilitate graduation of Black, African American, Chicano, Latino students. So it's all part of the same thing. Are there any others that are part of this? Rick?
Well, not if there's any other part of this. What I was going to address is actually combining those two, because I definitely like what Professor Murray had to say, but it's not just oversee diversity. I wanted to expand that to diversity and campus climate, and I think number 10 does actually a good job of doing it, but I don't want it to be just limited to those things there. So if we could combine and not lose any of that language if we're going to combine the two.
So we have 1, 10, and also look at 24, establish an Office of Campus Diversity. Right. Combine that one. And, okay, so those are the 3 that deal with that. And so the sense I get is we're going to combine the three. I'll come up with the language that will have it. And we're saying this is an office that will report directly to the president, correct?
Correct.
With someone heading it, a vice president, actually, which is good. Okay. Number 2, conduct periodic campus climate surveys akin to the Murray survey every 4 years under the auspices of the Office of Campus Diversity, with studies to be available to the public, utilized by faculty, staff, administrators, and students to determine what, if any, programs are necessary to promote diversity on the campus. Anybody? Is that you? Is that me? It's me? Okay. Okay, hearing nothing, I'm going to move on and say that's a yes. Okay. Let me get number 10 and 24, mark them off. Got it. Number 3, give formal university recognition to the groundbreaking work by Professor Murray on the 2011 Campus Climate Research Project and ensure that her study remains available on the San Jose State University website.
Can we add studies? Because there was the one study that was available, which was on the students, but the faculty staff one was definitely missing.
Yeah, she didn't do that one, though. That was
she
not the
didn't.
Murray study, my understanding. That's another one. So I'm interested, right now, my focus was, this was a study done in 2011, and my view, again, just my view, got absolutely no recognition by the administration. And until we brought it forward because it informed what we were doing. And I think someone who spent 3 years of her life working on this in addition to everything else here should be recognized. Now, I have no idea what kind of recognition there should be, but I believe it should become from the highest level in the university. So that's why. We good?
Yes.
All right. That one's on. Number 4, undertake a study to determine why graduation rates for African American and Latino males are low and take immediate steps to improve these rates. Now, that came from the WASTE report. There was a, hold on a second, and I'll pull it out for you. And it was a little shocking. This was the report that came out in 2007, and it was to San Jose State on educational effectiveness review. And I made a note of this in my recommendation on page 26. The report observes that graduation rates, particularly for some groups, African American and Latino males most notably, are a cause for serious concern. And then it goes on to show how low the rates are. And there's one that really struck me. Disaggregated data analyzed for this report also reveal that the 4-year graduation rate for African American males is 0. 4 years, 0. 0%. And that was from a report to San Jose State, 2007. So that's why I've made this recommendation, because it appears that that continues still to be the case, meaning the low graduation rates. Gary?
I'm confused as to what that actually means by 0. What does that mean?
That means that black male students are not graduating in 4 years.
Okay.
And that was of concern to the committee looking at it. Plus, it also noted the very low graduation rates of Latinos, generally males, and African American males, generally. No matter how long they're here. The numbers are very, very low, and they're all cited in the report. So how do we feel, folks?
Absolutely.
Oh, I'm
Bernadette.
certainly in favor of it. I'm wondering, however, if there is any updated information on that, or if the best we have is 6 or 7 years old.
Well, I don't know how frequently this group comes here. It's for certification purposes, so I have no idea. This is the information that I found, and I don't know. Does anybody think the graduation rates have now leveled out and everybody's doing fine?
Judge, I would say that no, the graduation rates certainly haven't increased significantly. And the WASC accreditation, the review occurs about every 10 years for all the campuses. So they come through, it's the Western Association of Schools and Colleges.
Thank you.
And they come through and they accredit all the universities on about a 10-year cycle.
So this one was in 2007, the next
Correct.
will be 2017.
Correct.
And this group noted in 2007 that they were very concerned about the low graduation rates. And I don't know what has been done since then, but I'm asking that something be done. We look at it today, so we don't wait for them to come back in 2017 and say, you know, there's still a problem.
As far as whether the situation has changed or not, as an African-American male currently in my 4th year, I'm certainly not graduating this year. I'm also thinking of the other African-American males who came through with my cohort. I can't think of any who have graduated. I can definitely say that far more have dropped out than have graduated, if there's any been graduated at all.
Wow, okay. So are we okay on number 4, undertake the
Yeah,
study?
and I just would
Please,
also
Tom.
note that the standard for measuring graduation rates these days is a 6-year rate and not necessarily the 4-year. But since they've cited it, I think it is important to note in the follow-up in terms of the data as it relates to 2014 and the student
Okay.
success rate.
Right, I'm not making an assumption
No.
that those numbers are the same, but I want us to find out if they are abysmally low, and if they are, then we got to do something. And you're saying they are, but we need to, confirm
No,
that.
we have the data. I don't know the exact number right now, but I have it in my office, and the data is available, and the provost in a recent meeting with me mentioned that those numbers are really
Yeah.
abysmally low.
Yeah, and maybe we shouldn't just focus on the males, but that's what came through on the report, that males do particularly poorly here. Yes.
Yes, I was going to say that during the time when Don Cassing was president, that was after the 2007 information came out, and he actually pulled together a group to actually work on that issue of the graduation and retention rates for students. Dr. Halulani can probably give more information and better information about that, but he actually did convene. There was a push to actually address that issue, and then of course we've had a lot of administrative change in that time period, so I don't know the
great.
current status.
All right, Dr. Halulani is here. Halulani. And
Sorry, I co-teach a course off-site.
That's
so
all
I was,
right.
like,
Thank you so much.
driving.
So what we'd like to do is ask you to, if you'll just briefly tell us who you are, your connection to the university, and you'll have 15 minutes, if you like, to talk to us, and then we're going to have some questions, and we'll see if we can have those questions done within 30 minutes.
Okay,
So thank you
great.
so much for joining us.
No problem. My name is Dr. Rona Halulani. I am currently a full professor in the Department of Communication Studies here at San Jose State. I am here because I think you're interested in the last role I occupied. From 2007 to 2009, I was in San Jose State's last official diversity role in terms of leadership. I was Special Assistant to the President, Director of Inclusive Excellence and Institutional Planning for President Don Cassing, and then President John Whitmore, and I returned to my department in 2009. The comments that I have today are really in terms of the capacity that my role filled, the office, its connection to the plan, and I'm also a national consultant for this issue for other campuses, so I can speak to what happens at other CSUs and what I see are the best practices. Sound good? Yeah.
Fantastic.
So in my role, it happened at about the time of 2007. And at the time, there was some president's reading groups. And there was a president's reading group on diversity, some of which you have members here on your task force. And they met with President Don Cassing at the time to talk about diversity and talk about our campus climate. And there was an idea that came out of that group to create a diversity master plan. So San Jose State at the time in 2007 didn't want diversity just to be the marketing public relations ploy. They just didn't want to have a pretty website about diversity. They really wanted to mean it. So this group went to the president was part of that group, and said, we really need to do something. We need an action plan. We want it campus-wide. We don't want it just in student affairs. We want it filtered throughout the entire university, every level, teaching, learning, staff, faculty, employee, alumni, and whatnot. So at the time, in 2007, I was tasked to work directly for the president. That is key. That is key. Any kind of a diversity role that makes a difference should be directly attached to the president and to the president's office. So I was his direct report, and I was charged to work with the campus to put together a diversity master plan. Some of you have seen it. It's on the website. It's dated 2009. About 93 to 100 campus members worked on it with me. It was definitely an organic campus process. There were 3 main goals of that diversity master plan. Number 1, which is still a key issue for this university, is diversifying faculty. That was the number 1 initiative. The second initiative was campus climate and how to strengthen the campus climate in the community. And number 3 was how do we engage the campus in terms of diversity and learning and differences and constructive interactions. I think it's really important to know that the plan was something that president's group, which was a core of faculty, staff, and leadership, had a really, really terrific idea because they They had seen San Jose State constantly create things in reaction to negative incidents, to things that had happened. And of course that does happen, but the plan was really to be a proactive, ongoing, recurring model for the university with regard to diversity and inclusive excellence. Upon my entry back to my department, the plan was completed in about 10 months. There were action steps, there were assessment measures, there were owners, there were whole divisions and offices that were joining the cause and were happy to do so. And they did, and they received some budget lines, and there was a sense that there was going to be the continuation of the work once I had left that role. That was not the case. I was on maternity leave. I had twins in the meantime, and then it wasn't until the following 6 months after the plan had been implemented, from 2009, that I would get emails from some of the members saying, we haven't heard anything about the plan, we're doing our part, but we want to know where the president stands on this. And in 2011, I was brought back to evaluate and assess the progress of the plan since its inception. So I came back in 2011 and with the grad students that I had worked with and evaluated and assessed the plan, and looked at what worked and what did not work. In my role in the working for the president, it was just myself and about 4 graduate students, 4 terrific graduate students who had helped me with things. Because I was a direct line to the president, whatever I needed, I could go to the president, ask for operating budget money to help with regard, not just to the plan, but I worked with the chair of Campus Climate, Wiggsy Stiverson, on campus climate issues that came up. And there are always climate issues, no matter what. Whether it's campus community members of color, religious difference was a really big aspect at that time, in addition to the retention and graduation task forces that were developed as well. And so we were trying to kind of connect all of these pieces together and make a meaningful action plan. At the time, there was no diversity leader at any other CSU. Since then, there are about 5 CSUs that now, they don't have an office of diversity. They have a person, like I was, maybe with 1 staff member. The best practice for me is if you want this office to matter or this role to matter, they need to have a direct reporting line to the president. They need to be on the president's cabinet, where they have the ear of the leadership. They need to be connected to the president because oftentimes that role is often situated either in student affairs only or in academic affairs only. And I think that does not, I think it diminishes the authority of not just the role, but of the commitment to diversity. So if you look at San Diego State University, for example, or you look at Cal Poly, which just instituted a director of diversity direct line to the president in the last 6 months, you'll see that there is 1 person, usually with a staff member, and there are resources. And campus climate is not in student affairs. It's actually connected directly to the byline of the president. That's a national model because that's important. If there is something wrong in the community, the leadership needs to know so that direct action can take place. Are there?
No.
Am I on time?
No, you have actually 8 more minutes.
Oh, okay. If not, I can open up to Q&A
You have
as
7
well.
more minutes if there's anything else you want to tell us. Right ahead.
I think that's it. There are specific things about the plan and the future that I can also answer, but I'm not sure if it'd be better served with
All right, so
questions.
we're going to, you're fantastic. Thank you so much. So we're going to jump in and ask questions. I'm going to kick one off here. If you had a choice, assuming an office were established, as you've recommended, direct report to the president, the person who runs the office is the member of the cabinet.
Yes.
For this university,
Yes.
how big an office do you envision it? If you could just, this is, have it any way you wanted it to be.
Yes.
Tell us what it would look like, and what would its name be? Are we talking diversity? Are we talking campus climate? So kind of give us
Okay.
your idea of the.
Just my idea, just Rona Halulani's idea. For me, I would love for this university, my home, to have an office that had definitely a leader, a diversity leader who is a leader for the entire campus, a thought leader, a leader about strategic planning with regard to diversity and inclusion, the proactive notions. Usually in many of the diversity and inclusion offices, there's also the equity, EEO, affirmative action type of aspect in case there are incidents or that there are issues that need to be dealt with. Oftentimes, those two functions are often put in one person. I caution San Jose State from not doing that. I think that it diminishes either side of those functions and in a way that is not healthy for the institution. I know that human resources and faculty affairs have a hand in those roles, and so if there's a way to kind of coordinate that, that would be great. I would love a solid operational budget. I always felt like I had to go and, go and ask for money. I would love to have a healthy, for this individual, this office, to have a healthy budget where it's.
How many staff?
2 to 3 to start.
And how many to end? I mean, I want to know if this were running the way you'd want it to run to
If
make a
this
difference
is the way it would want it to run, I would want it to look like Penn State. Sorry,
is?
Penn State has a very large division, I know, but a very large division, but it also has not just a couple of vice chancellors of diversity, but they also have staff members, and they also have assessment analysts on aspects of diversity on retention and graduation. So they have upwards of 15 to 16. That's my dream. Go big or go home, right? And they've just done a fine job of it in the last 20, 25 years. There's other models as well. But even if this does not become a large staff office, it should be one that's given the commitment, the authority, and the resources to start out with to create that kind of momentum.
And where do you see it located on the campus?
Physically?
You could pick anywhere you want it, yes.
Oh, gosh. Right in Tower Hall.
Tower Hall?
Yes. That's where my office was.
It's the president's office. All right. Okay.
I have a question.
Other questions? We'll go around here, Maria, and then we'll go to Bernadette.
Hello, Rona.
Hi, Maria.
You know, I was a part of the Inclusive Excellence, and there were, as you said, about 100 people
Yes.
who were enthusiastic and very
Wonderful.
hopeful, and it was a wonderful process. You completed the report, and can you tell me what happened? Why was it not fully implemented?
Yes. In 2009, it was actually created August, I think, 15th, 2009, and I think that there was no, they didn't fill my role, and I don't know why they didn't fill my role in that capacity. The president at the time, President Whitmore and his cabinet. I personally believe it wasn't fully implemented enough because there just wasn't presidential commitment to it. That's my opinion. Each of the assigned owners kept doing the work, though, of the plan. I made sure right before I went out of the role that everybody knew what they were doing, and they were doing it. They just weren't doing it with any sense of captain steering the ship. That's how great this university is you've got these 100 people that are on board, and not only that, they're emailing me saying, we haven't heard anything about it, and we know what we're doing, but we want to know that we're doing it right. So I think the great thing for you all to know is you have a cadre of people, many people on this campus that supports this, supports you, and I just think there was no presidential commitment to it. And at the time, the issue was sustainability and environmental justice, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it definitely, the notion was that diversity wasn't important. I believe folks dropped the ball.
Thank you. Bernadette?
Thank you. As someone coming from the outside, I really want to acknowledge your commitment and really the fine work that you did.
Oh, thank you.
You also
The
indicate
work of a lot of people, too. But
yes, and the 100 plus.
people.
And I'm sure there's more than that.
Yeah.
You indicated that in 2011, you did an assessment of the plan. Could you summarize what that assessment led you to conclude?
Yes, we did do an assessment. There were several of my former graduate students that helped with that were part of that. We created an infographic that summarized those results as well as a kind of a report. We found that overall about 3/4 of the plan had been implemented, had been assessed, but nobody knew about it. And the budget monies to keep it going were not replenished. We realized that the action steps that did not survive were because those individuals, and again, this is why it's important to have an infrastructure and a structural plan, because we had some champions attached to steps and they retired or they moved on. And so when that happens, those efforts don't become sustainable. So we learned that the hard way. But at the time, we thought that there was definitely institutional commitment for it. So it kind of came down to that, and I had a meeting with the current president, President Qayoumi, in 2011, sharing the results, sharing my findings, sharing my strong recommendations that a role, an office, that this work be continued. And it doesn't have to look the way it does now. It could be better, because this was just a first iteration. And I shared all of these same notions at the time. And in my opinion, there didn't seem to be interest.
What is your view about having the person, assuming this office exists, as a vice president?
I would love that.
How important are titles? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think that would be, yeah, if it's given kind of an authority line, if it's given, you know, that particular role, that particular title, I think that that really helps. The issue with kind of having a diversity leader is I think that it's a catch-22. While that's awesome because it shows the commitment and it shows that there is authority to it, it oftentimes doesn't work on the integrative model approach, which is, oh, you know, Rona's going to take care of it. I don't have to take care of that as the VP on this section. So there's that issue too, and that's not lost on me. And I think it's a VP could work, but there also needs to be a way where the commitment is also interspersed into every leadership role at the cabinet level.
Since you have an expertise in this area,
Yes.
how long would it take you to give us a description of the ideal diversity office for this
How long would it take
university?
me?
Yes, to just write it down and say, this is my idea of an ideal office for either whatever it is. What, by the way, would you call it diversity, campus climate, or what would you call it?
I would call it either diversity or an inclusive excellence. I still believe in that notion, the philosophy of inclusive excellence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever you call it, how long would it take you to just draft for us a description of
Not
the
long.
ideal? Well, what does that mean? Could you have
Early,
it?
I could do it by Monday.
All right. Will you do that, please?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And when it's done, you just need to, you can
Send it
email it
to-
to me and to Dorothy.
Okay.
Okay? Sure.
I have a question over.
Yes, Gary.
I have a question and I want to get your perspective on a couple things. So earlier you stated that the Office of Diversity should have resources.
Yes.
It should have its own operating budget. And also that the national standard is that the campus climate is from the president's budget. For most universities across the nation, the president is responsible for campus climate, right? Is that what you said?
Usually campus climate is typically at most institutions, and I have more specific information usually attached to the office of the president in some way.
Right. So when it comes to campus climate and about the environment for students, the particular student experience, so is that something that will fall under the Office of Diversity since the president is responsible for campus climate? Like,
It could be a both and approach as opposed to an either or. So there could be that office then works, or that individual or role works with all of the relevant roles on campus that are about facilitating student experience. Because I think it's just not just in one office, but that it involves a lot of different roles. That's how I've typically seen it. That's how I typically think it'll work.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but there may be very specific attention to student experience, like let's say for this campus, for the next several years out. So yes, that could be a commitment in that role right now.
Okay, well, the last thing I want to get your perspective on, so say if there were to be resource centers for, underrepresented students, for example, African-American males who have a 0% effective graduation rate or whatever the statistics were. If there were to be resource centers, would that go under this Office of Diversity? Considering a lot of the issue is that this university can't seem to find funding for its underrepresented minority students. So if the president is responsible for campus climate, so do you think the president himself or that funding for research centers should come out of the president's budget?
I think that there should be support for what I refer to as specific group-focused retention and graduation initiatives. That's a best practice. I think it needs to be at a high level. It could either be through the Office of the President, but typically you see it on the academic affairs side because it's affiliated then with the colleges and the academic excellence part. So I mean, it could go either way in terms of that. And if, at the time, I think when I was in the role, there were retention and graduation initiatives, and the president worked really hard with the provost on those, and those were university-wide kind of monies, permanent base monies, and they were university-wide or they're shared between the divisions, but it was at a high level of commitment. So I think as long as you have that high level of commitment, wherever you place that and what budget monies are there, base or whatnot would be key.
Okay, I'm going to see if anybody else has any questions. I want to follow up on something. Would such an office also deal with diversity with respect to faculty, retention, hiring, tenure, promotion?
Yeah, I would think that they would work very closely with faculty affairs. We used to have a Diversifying Faculty initiative as recent as last year with all of the departments and the programs, but then they said there was a commission coming out and they were going to do other things and it wasn't. But yes, they would be taking the lead on that, and they would be working really heavily with the provost and the deans on that.
So that's all going to be in your description when you
Yes.
write it up. Thank you. All right.
Yes.
Any other questions for the professor? Yes. Maria.
Well, adding to that, what about diversifying administration? I mean, since the leadership has such a major influence on organizational culture.
Yes, and there are programs at other universities where they have a kind of a leadership development program with regard to diversifying our leadership and how does that work and letting people know about that. But yeah, and that is something that, should there be a second iteration of the plan, which should be a key factor in that, because this university has struggled with that, as you know, in particular.
Okay, thank you. Rick?
So this kind of ties into the diversification of faculty and administration. What would be the role of human resources, and how do you envision that would tie into this position?
Diversifying faculty or diversifying administration?
Well, just overall, well, because what
Yeah.
you're describing, my mind immediately goes to HR being potentially a component of who this vice president would oversee.
Yes, it's a good point. Oftentimes, kind of a role like diversity is often put in a human resources division because their focus is on the diversifying faculty hires or the diversifying leadership hires. I think that might be a little bit tricky on this campus, given the, how shall I put this? The different roles and the history between HR and faculty affairs. But I would not want the Office of Diversity, let me put it this way, to be so overwhelmed by multiple large-scale functions where it takes the eye off the ball, off of diversity. And let me put it this way, I know, and it's to no fault of anyone, because this was new terrain for San Jose State. There's always a sense of, we can put this on Rona's plate, we can put this on Rona's plate, we can put this on Rona's plate, we can put this on Rona's plate. But the diversity aspect and everything that went along with it was so big, and it required such care and attention. I often felt like I'm dropping the ball here. I've got like 5 other multiple functions. I was in charge of strategic planning for the university in addition to kind of the diversity planning, facilitating that process. That's huge. So for me, keep in mind, and it'll be in my description to you all, is to keep that role focused, to keep it so that the eye on the ball is never, ever lost, and then that person isn't overwhelmed.
Okay. Tony?
Yes, I was going to say, and I appreciate your comment, certainly in the reports, that there are many models out
Yes.
there in terms of how to structure such an office, and looking forward to what you will share with us to be able to then put together a recommendation, because I do believe there are a lot of different ways to look at it, and I would want us not to get stuck on just one model, but as you indicated, there are a lot of models, and
Yes.
certainly from a national perspective, in addition to what needs to be unique to San Jose State.
Correct.
Right.
Great comments. There's
Right.
let 1,000 flowers bloom. There's a lot of models, and it has to fit our history, our context.
Which is why I think
People.
you're perfectly positioned to give us a description. You know this place. You know the history. You've been in the eye of the storm, so to speak. So who better than you to put your thoughts down and say, okay, if I could create an office and have the resources, here's what I think should be here for this university and why. So that's what I'm hoping that we will get from you.
Well,
Great. Yes, Linda.
Just a comment, because, is it on? Because I was looking, because I remember we have an Office for Equal Opportunity, so I was trying to figure out, but their role really is primarily around complaints and legal issues, not around the development that you're describing and that we very much need. So I just thought I'd clarify that that's, human resources serves a different kind of function here. When somebody asks about human resources, they tend to do more of that kind of work rather than the kind of work you're describing as a standalone office.
Yeah, there's usually two sides of the house. There's usually a compliance, incident response, rapid response notion on this side, and then there's diversity in terms of proactive, long-term planning, keeping the community engaged. That's really, really important. And so those two functions are really, really important. But I think HR is important because I would often work with folks in HR, especially about diversifying administrators. Be like, we only have this much in the pool. Is that enough? Is this diverse enough? Is this internal? Is this external? What do we do here? And we have to follow protocol, but we have to keep in mind about how do we broaden that net and cast it wide.
Okay. Rick?
It's just a quick question. At any point when you were the diversity officer, did you request additional staff? It was very telling to me that you said you had 4 students that were supporting you, and immediately my thought went exactly where the chair had said, you know, what would your ideal situation look like? Had you requested staff, and what was the response like if you had?
The individual who brought me in and kind of allowed me to have this opportunity was Don Casting, and he was great. Whatever I needed, I wanted. And he said, do you want me to bring 1 or 2 staff people in here? What do you need? Mm-hmm. And I had never experienced that from anybody else, just him. But I wanted 4 of our graduate students. They were all of different backgrounds. They were first generation. They knew students. Mm-hmm. They were on the pulse, and they were great researchers. And this role had to be something where we were able to talk to a lot of people, where we gathered a lot of research. And so that's why I chose them. And they were the best team ever, and they really cared. So and they were also TAs at the time. So that's why I chose them. If I wanted in the first year 1 or 2 or 3 individual staff, I probably could have. But at the time, that team was what I needed.
Okay.
Yeah, I hope in your description you'll also kind of talk about the staff, kind
Yeah.
of staffing would be. I want to make one observation, I'll get to you, Gabrielle, is that I was the affirmative action officer at Stanford, and that work is very different
Yeah.
from doing this kind of work in the
Exactly.
diversity office, because I was concerned about staff representation and getting numbers and reporting to the feds and all of that. So
Right.
it's a different issue entirely, so
Mhm.
I wouldn't want to see those, you
Exactly.
can't combine them. They're very,
Exactly.
very, very different issues.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay, Gabrielle.
In regards to staff, what would be the role of the students in this office? Would there be student assistants, or what would be the role of their, yeah?
That's who my graduate students were. They were my student assistants, and they would work with me on staff. They wouldn't just answer phones and everything. We were creating things together, doing research together. But yeah, student assistants would be terrific, because especially those students in areas where they're studying diversity and social justice, what a better learning lab than a role or an office like this. That was kind of how I approached it as a faculty member. But you're going to need staff members maybe to help in terms of, not unlike Mosaic, where there's events or coordination. In a lot of places now, universities now, have one staff level position that just focuses on diversity assessment. Goes in, tracks how many faculty, how many staff, how many students of all these different backgrounds, of different sexual orientations, of different, generations, do we have them here? And they create dashboards, and they really work with leadership to say, because we've got an institutional research site, institutional effectiveness in analytics, but do we have a site that really spells out all of the diversity dashboards? No. Should we? Yes. And that's what the person would help facilitate.
Mm-hmm. Would your diversity office be a place where students who had complaints, say about racism or whatever, would come to that office?
I think that there could be, there could be a role for that, but I have a feeling that that role also is served in multiple other sites at the campus. And so long as it's not closed off anywhere else, students would come to our events and they would share us their stories, and they would, we did a little bit of a study where a lot of students came to us because we actually studied for the Asilomar retreat, students who had dropped out, students of color who had dropped out of San Jose State University, and we went and we found them and we spoke to them, and we spoke to them in their neighborhoods and in their communities, and they wanted to share their stories with us. So I think that that's always going to be part of an office or a role of diversity, of having a place where you could come to if needed.
I have a quick comment.
Okay, we have 1 minute, and that's it. So who, is that you, Gary? Oh, I'm sorry, Delorme, 1 more minute. Go ahead.
You indicated several times that the success of what you were intending to do really depended upon the leadership of the president. And in the absence of the president's support, things kind of faded away.
Yes.
So I see that as human nature. So if you develop such a plan in the future, I'm pragmatic about this, and you still had 100 people that were very interested in implementing this and wanted to carry forward, and 3/4 of the plan was still operational, in the absence of presidential leadership, is it viable?
I think it is, as long as there is shared responsibility and commitment for those action steps. And at some point, the plan was able to actually keep going for like 1.5 years, almost 2 years, without huge presidential support. I think it's possible. I think it makes it difficult. You always maybe want a plan that's institutionalized or embedded very deeply into the organizational structure, because as you know, we have a constant flow of leadership here, right? So for me, the notion was, how can we get embedded in the organizational structure? And that was always tricky. So I think if you do that, if your focus is on that, but you also need to have the presidential commitment, those two together are a powerful force. And if the presidential authority is not there, then at least you have some time to, and then get the community rallied up to make that right again, is my notion. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for
Thank
spending your
you.
time
Thank
with
you
us.
for
We
waiting for me.
greatly appreciate it, and we look forward to getting your description of your ideal office, diversity office.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
So much.
Thank you for all your work.
Thank you. Wow. Okay. We're going to go back to going down our campus climate recommendations. We're up to number 5. Include explicit discussion about race in all diversity programming. Comments? Diana.
That actually ties into my number 6.
Number 6, first-year course taught by professors or counselors included in the curriculum should be a module for each diverse group that's represented. An example may be something like this from Stanford. Geriatrics at Stanford, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
so let me elaborate on that.
Sure.
So in my nursing class this semester, we actually had an assignment where there's a module, a website that's on Stanford. It's designed for medical professionals, but it can be something that's in education. And it's a module about older Americans using geriatrics, and there's a background on almost every major racial category, or cultural category. And it's very specific. That's what we've all been talking about. We want to go directly for it and not dance around the idea of it. So something like that. It's a module about each group, and it's peer-reviewed. All of them are peer-reviewed. So it's something that can be incorporated in a curriculum so that they can increase dialogue in classrooms about something like that in the first-year course.
Okay. Any other comments on these two? We'll put 5 and 6 together.
I think it'll be difficult to put 5 and 6 together because you're talking about a curriculum for a course. And I think you're also talking about diversity programming.
Okay.
That
So
would be inclusive of race. So I think that would be okay to separate those. But
All right, let's
when you're
separate
talking
them.
coursework, I think it's real
Okay.
difficult.
So let's separate. Let's talk about 5. Thank you, Tony. So what's the feeling about 5? Should we go forward with it or not? Gabrielle?
I really like it, but I wish that we could include, if we're gonna solely focus on that, we should also focus on sexuality and different things like that. So it's just gonna be hard to focus on one certain thing, maybe we could have different programs focus on the top 8,
Right.
the top 8 oppressions.
So I think we talked about this before. It isn't meant to exclude anyone else. That we remembered there was some sort of, or it was orientation or something went on, and they talked about, sexual orientation, but they never talked about race. So I just want to make sure it's included in the programming, not to the exclusion of anything else. But it really just didn't happen 1 year or something. So, so again, I can work on the language to make sure it's to be included and not excluded, along with everything else. Okay, so we move on? Okay. 6, that was Diana's. Comments? Silence mean yes, no?
No.
What? Yes? Linda?
It's a little bit complicated. I think it fits as a recommendation. I think there needs to be awareness that there is, when you're talking about curriculum, there's a process. And, there are a lot of issues like academic freedom and, all the rest of it. So keeping that in mind, there may be some wording that could be modified a little bit. I'm not doing that off the top of my head. I mean, I'm not sure I could do that right now, but I think that could help, but still be recommending the same thing.
Okay. Delamy?
Would you consider it being a resource, like Kaiser has posted on their website? Like the office of, our office, we published a document.
And tell
that-
people again what your office
Yeah,
is.
Our Office of Human Relations at Santa Clara County Government, where we study immigrants, for example. And we've done extensive research on immigrants in this community, and we've documented their needs and contributions and their concerns and issues. If we could have a website that posted research about all those different groups, like Kaiser has done, they have a major initiative on this, would that satisfy you?
Oops, sorry. Yes, the wording definitely needs to be more descriptive. And I think what I meant to as adding in a curriculum is, as in we just need to have direct communication about race, since that's what we're all talking about. So yes, it could be a resource and also part of the curriculum where it needs to be discussed and also taught. And
Right, so I need a rewording, and I need somebody
Yes.
to who's going to reword it. Don't have to do it right now, but I need it reworded sometime next week.
How about Diane and I work on it together?
All right? So I'd like to have something today. It's Thursday. Could I have it by Tuesday?
Yes.
All right? Okay, great. So this will be reworded. And thank you both for doing that. 7, institute an ethnic studies requirement for all students that uses a participatory pedagogy and provides students with the opportunity to get to know each other through structured group interaction in the classroom. Classes should be taught by diverse faculty. Anybody want to talk to that? All right. Maria, that's yours?
The reason I recommended an ethnic studies requirement specifically is because ethnic studies is taught from the perspective of the group that has been excluded or marginalized. And I think every student needs to have that experience before they graduate. And in the particular issue that prompted this task force, I think with the Confederate flag, I think if students had ethnic studies course and they knew what that symbolizes, maybe they would have acted sooner.
Your recommendation presupposes that there will be ethnic studies departments, because I understand there was a concern about one point about at least an ethnic studies department with the African American ethics, right? Studies department maybe was going away. So that kind of presupposes that these exist. So comments, Gary, and then Linda.
Yeah, I can clarify.
I just I want to first speak in support of this recommendation. I definitely think a new core diversity or core ethnic studies a GE requirement should be implemented. I also think that's related to one of Marco's recommendations, so we might need to look at combining something. But that's something that students have been talking about for a while. But I just wanted to make the point that lately, new developments in regards to just having ethnic studies, we're thinking about including women's studies and, as Gabriel said, human sexuality into that core diversity requirement. So not just, but like pretty much like all the, issue focus, whatever. So basically ethnic, for example, in my mind, and obviously there could be more suggestions, but for me, the big 5 would be African American studies, Asian American studies, Latina studies, and human sexuality and women's studies. So that would be the main 5. And if there's other ways to do that, but I think those 5 should definitely be targeted in
Okay,
a
let's
diverse
see.
requirement.
Maria, what's your response to that?
I'm in agreement with that. It would be more of a diversity course, but I would also include Native Americans.
That's 6. So, is there any rewording that needs to be, oh, Linda, you had a comment. Go right ahead. Sorry.
To clarify, in terms of African-American studies, the proposal was not to eliminate the program, but rather to move it from being a department to being a program, which changes administrative structure, but the same courses could be offered, majors still there, minors still there, all of that. So I think that is important to state that it's never been proposed to eliminate.
Okay. Bernadette, and then Tony.
I do really see the value of this. I am concerned about what might be left out when we begin to take diversity and focus it down into only a few things. There are so many others. There's ageism, excuse me. There's disabilities. The list goes on, and so I just want to express that concern, and that maybe there should be something more inclusive here.
Okay. I also don't want us to lose sight. The reason we're all sitting in this room is because of race, right? So, I mean, let's not let that get lost in the discussion. So it was Tony, and then Marcos and Gary.
Okay, just want to, for those that don't know, there is a CSU-wide task force on ethnic studies, and the Chancellor White has put together that, and along the way, there is a moratorium on any action taken as it relates to either the creation or to the elimination or the reduction of any courses related to diversity and ethnic studies. So while it can be a recommendation, it would be so in light of the fact that there is a system-wide discussion taking place at the Chancellor's office level.
Wow. Okay. So where are we on number 7? Do we want to
So
go ahead? I'm sorry, Marcos.
Yeah,
Sorry.
just it's okay.
No.
Just one more thought is that I sent, it may not be in the printed list people have, but I sent one that was in the updated list, which was having a diversity requirement in lower division GE.
Yes, it was included. It was an email that went out.
So I think that could be connected to this, and I was trying to be explicit about it, and so I understand the concern about not leaving anything out, but I think, as Judge Cordell has said a few times, we're making recommendations, and we want to make the strongest recommendations we can.
Right.
And one of the issues with GE is that in several of the GE areas, they say diversity shall be incorporated in an appropriate manner, which means it isn't.
So your recommendation is, and I'm reading from your email, the university should institute a diversity course requirement in lower division GE, right? So we don't get into the details. We just say, this is what we're saying you need to do.
Well, there does need to be.
Go ahead, Gary.
Well, when we're talking about rewording, combining things, I do want to emphasize that, well, in regards to my perspective, I was actually specifically talking about an upper division GE. You know how, well, you wouldn't know, but we have area R and S, which is supposed to talk about society, civilization, et cetera. And the reason, well, for one, there are no African American Studies courses for a particular section where there should be, where there are Latino, Chicano Studies, and Asian American Studies. But anyway, more importantly is that for that particular section, I want to say is Area S, there actually are like 30 courses, wide-ranging courses that, honestly, that section would do a lot better if it was shortened or made smaller. But I'm not suggesting editing Area S. I'm suggesting making an entirely new, I would suggest making an entirely new GE requirement, upper division.
All right, I'm just a little confused. So right now, I have Marcos, university should institute a diversity course requirement in lower division GE. So now that's one. So is everybody okay on that, with that language? Diana?
I just have a question. Is this, we're making 2 recommendations right now. The one where it's the lower course GE, which
That's
is
what we're talking about now, just that right now.
Okay, but does that cancel out other classes that we're making recommendations of? Because we're recommending the first year course as well.
No, you and Linda are going to reword your thing. That's different, right?
No,
So
yeah, there's
how
a little
do you
bit of a
wanna-
difficulty because the ideas can be really, really great, but there are broader issues. Like GE is actually a very complex thing, okay, very, very complex. And when you try to say to someone, now you have to add this requirement, that's not simple because there's a limit on how many units students can be given to graduate. So
Okay.
this is very complicated.
So what's your suggestion?
My suggestion is to, and I was planning to work with her on that, you know, as academic senate, that's where those things happen.
Right.
And there's certain kinds of language. For example, when you're suggesting that you make a new requirement that's mandatory, it's so complex, it's actually very hard to come up with a sentence or two that explains that. But we've discussed that a little bit, Gary. And those things typically are requested by the department that wants to be included in the GE requirements. That has not happened for
okay.
these.
So
So
what-
that's what makes it very difficult. You're trying to impose something that people are free to ask for at any time already.
So let me understand. So if we make a recommendation saying, you know, something should be required, it isn't, then there is this process, and it isn't about just imposing a requirement? Is that what you're saying? I mean, it's just not going to happen like that.
It sounds like, yeah, see, I think what I'm trying to think of is when we make recommendations, we want to make them, as Marco said, that this is made in a way that maximizes success, that the recommendation is considering the context in which the recommendation is made.
So what is wrong with the recommendation he's making, though? You should institute a diversity course requirement in lower division. That's the recommendation. So then the process
I think the
begins.
practical concern is how does it actually happen when the academic
idea.
senate says, you know,
Says,
we're
we're-
not going to add requirements, we're not going to add units.
Got it.
We've got all
No,
these problems.
I don't think
know.
that's not the concern that I'm trying to state. What I'm trying to state is there are already procedures in place where that can be requested by a department. And the Senate cannot sit around and make a department do something they don't want to do. And so
Right, but
unless
this
the
is
department's
thinking bigger
required.
picture, though, right? It's not saying a department comes up with an idea that it's saying the university is making a decision that this is what we want.
All right.
If I might.
Tony, then Chris.
I agree with the notion of having a recommendation and let the process play out, because I think
Chris.
it's important for
All
the
right,
process.
let's keep moving. Chris?
Yeah, I think we have to be careful to not try to do too many of the same things. So having a first-year requirement course and a recommendation for a GE, lower division GE course, and a recommendation for an upper GE course.
So what do you recommend?
What I recommend is going with Marcos's recommendation. And while I definitely appreciate the notion of having a first-year experience course, I think that could be something that kind of fits in with what Marcos is describing as having a general ed requirement
All right.
for a diversity
So are you
course.
saying don't go forward on recommendation 6, but go forward with 7, but do it with the language with the one sentence?
Yes.
All right, so let me go to Gary and then to Maria.
So I just want to say, so in regards to any suggestions to change or update a course requirement, I just want to emphasize from a student perspective who's dealt with campus climate, protesting, et cetera, students should not graduate without taking at least African American studies, Latino studies, Asian studies, human sexuality, women's studies. So that's basically where I'm coming from in regards to my comments on any suggestion.
All right, Maria?
Whether the recommendation goes forward or not, I just feel that every student who graduates from San Jose State should take a course on race and ethnic relations.
Okay.
Whether it's
So-
GE, whether it's
Okay.
not, but I
All
just
right.
think every student should take a
Okay.
course
So here's
focused on
where-
race and ethnicity.
Thank you. So here's where we may be. We don't go forward on 6. Instead, we look at 7 that says, university should institute a diversity, and I can put it /ethnic studies, so we're covering it all, course requirement in lower division GE.
It won't be every student then, because we have transfer students who will never take those lower division courses.
Okay,
Okay.
so.
So when you
out
say
here-
GE, it probably should be upper division.
So do we want to not put the word lower division in?
Yes, we do not want to put
That's what
lower
I'm hearing,
division.
just upper division. First Marcos and then
The only
Michael.
way you'll get to all
So
I got
the issue that came up that led us here was freshmen coming in on campus and creating this community. So can we do it when they first get here? That's the idea, is have them early in their experience have this opportunity. That's the thinking of lower division GE.
All right, Michael. Okay? All right, so where are we now? Gary, very quickly, we want to.
So what if we just have both? Because also upper division courses are obviously more informative and more complex than lower division courses, so a little intro,
So
prep,
what
and then
are
upper
you
division.
proposing?
I'm proposing we have a lower division and upper division.
All right, so the proposal is now, universities should institute a diversity/ethnic studies course requirement in both lower division and upper division, GE.
I don't agree with that.
Okay, Linda says no. Michael?
Actually, I like your language. Your very first sentence, just call it a day, that the university should institute the very first part of your sentence, please.
Sure, the university should institute a diversity/ethnic studies course requirement.
Period. And wherever it lands,
For all students.
for all students.
Right. Gary?
Period.
Everybody?
Period.
All right, that's what I like about this group. Okay, for all students. That covers everybody. And then they have to figure out how to do it, right? All right, that's our number 7. What about number 6? Do we want to keep that? I mean, I've heard a suggestion like, no, we're doing too much, too little. What's the sense?
To me, I think it would be very difficult because the context right now is that the Chancellor's Office is requiring many programs to drop as many as 12 units from their majors. So that's a reality.
So what are you suggesting?
My suggestion is that first year can be available. I think it would be hard to pass both of those
It's okay.
as
So
requirements.
All right, so you're saying delete 6. That's what I'm trying to get
No,
at.
I'm saying that
Don't-
not make it a requirement. Make it available, but not make it a requirement.
All right, Diana, this was your proposal. So Linda's suggesting making it available but not a requirement. You're number 6.
Oh, yeah, we can do that.
That's what she's saying.
I
Over
like
here?
that.
Okay,
But-
quickly. I'm sorry, Diana, go ahead.
I was also reading, I think it was one of the RAs when they recommended the syllabus. So the syllabus for that first year course, it doesn't have to be a class. It could be a 6-week class that's offered throughout certain times in the semester.
So, but what are we saying about 6? Are we saying, do you still want to work with Linda on rewording it?
Yeah, we can work on
Okay,
rewording
so
it.
that
We
won't be
can put it
required, but
first year
you'll come up with that language.
Okay.
And
All
we
right?
can call it experience or
I
whatever.
think,
We're going to move forward. We got to
I
move.
would say, if we look at, fast forward to number 11, it
All
says
right.
the same thing.
All
And
right.
so I want to make sure we strike
Thank you,
one out.
Tony. All right, number 11 says a first-year FYE class mandated for all entering students.
And
So
that would be,
so we're
I think-
combined number 6 and number 11. Thank you so much.
I really just want to say, I think
Combine 19.
Hold on.
Number 19.
And number 19, Michael?
And
Number 19
23.
says expand side 2 to accommodate more students. Is that the same?
Yeah, it's actually the first year experience course
All right,
that
so
we
that's
already
1,
have that
2,
does
3.
everything that we're sitting here
Okay,
talking
so
about.
that's 6, 11, and 19.
23.
19, 23, create a first-year experience, okay, and 23. All right, so those.
6, 11, 19, 23?
Yep, 6, 11, 19, and 23. They're all kind of put together. You all going to reword something, get it to me by Tuesday.
I really just emphasize that there needs to be some discussion and more thought out as far as it being required or not, because I think that if it's not required, people just most likely aren't going to take the class. People who need to take the class aren't going to take it. The people who already want to take ethnic studies are going to take it.
Right,
You know.
but that's our number 7. It says,
Oh, we're talking about two different.
should institute a diversity
Okay.
course requirement
Okay,
for all
so-
students.
so we
So
did-
we were talking about number 6.
So we
Yeah.
didn't edit number 7 and not make it required.
No,
Great.
7's required.
Cool.
Okay, Gabrielle.
I don't know if we talked about the Muse program that was here like 4 years ago, and it was the exact same thing, the first year experience, and it kind of died. So if the people who are going to reword the first year experience course could look into the Muse program and why it died and all of that too.
It died because of money and effectiveness, so I was here, so.
All right, let's keep moving?
Yeah.
All
but
right,
it's
number
similar.
8, create a reporting mechanism for bias incidents. There needs to be reporting mechanism for microaggressions and bias incidents. This brings up the letter that I sent you all from the student who asked not to be named, who said she witnessed something in a classroom, plus she said she had to wait. She said a white professor, she was there first, and 2 white students came in, and the professor met an hour or so, kept her waiting, and then said the professor didn't have time to meet with that student. That's her perception of what happened. So we can call it whatever you want, microaggressions, bias, whatever. Where does a student go who has that kind of an experience?
Currently, although I doubt it is well publicized or whatever, but that Office of Equal Opportunity supposedly handles that. As it is, I'm not addressing effectiveness or availability or any of that, but officially, right now, that's where it is.
Well, clearly, the student didn't know that. Or didn't, you know, right. So if there is such an office, it's not doing what it should be doing in terms of getting out there. But is that what we want? Or, as our speaker said, maybe there should be a number of places where a person could go, one of them being a diversity office and the other EO.
I want to
Gary.
say that I definitely think it needs to be a well-known place because obviously our task force has clearly received numerous reports and incidents as if we're the people to report to. And then offline, I've had people ask me where should they go when something happens, when a professor, you know, says something racist and they're waiting for office hours to happen.
Okay,
So
but I noticed the wording, and this is, Ellen, this is yours, create a reporting mechanism for, and I'm talking, I went to, you know, a place. So what did you mean in yours, if you will?
Well, yeah, not only a place, but like you said, it's not, whatever it is, it needs to be publicized. But students, and not just students too, but faculty, staff, and everyone on campus needs to know how to report it, where to go, what's going to happen, the timeline, and the whole
Okay.
thing.
So our recommendation is that the university should identify places to which people can report these kinds of incidents. We can come up with the words, biased incidents or, you know, racism, whatever. And the university should well publicize these places and the reporting mechanisms throughout the university. So is it all right if I add that language?
Great.
Okay.
I would suggest also adding that it be included in freshman orientation.
Okay, I'm putting all that in. Hold on, identify.
Probably fits in the previous set that we had. The previous set of recommendations was reporting procedures and policies,
Yep.
right? So-
That's fine, I got it. But I still think we can call it
Yeah.
out.
No, no,
and
for
you can
sure,
put in-
for sure,
Okay, I've got the frosh orientation.
Could we add that, expand that to be all orientations? Because you have transfer students, grad students, anybody who
Got it.
comes here needs to
Faculty
be
and
oriented.
staff
Faculty,
orientation.
everybody.
Okay, so all
Okay.
orientations, and that would be students, faculty, staff, administrators, right? Okay, got it. Number 9, Maria?
I wanted to support the recommendation that Tony just made, that it's not just students, it's also faculty and staff. A Latina administrator recently told me that a major donor to the university made explicitly racist comments. There were 2 AVPs present who did not speak up, and she spoke up. She's a Latina. She spoke up, and the 2 AVPs did not make any statement to counter what this woman said. So I'm sharing this because it's at all levels, staff, administrator, and students.
Much work to be done, huh? God darn. All right, thank you. So we're moving on to number 9. Create a sustainable campus, I guess it's campus-wide, diversity education program for faculty, staff, administrators, and students. So have we, I think did we cover that? I'm sorry, have we? Have we covered that? Yeah, number 9. Has that already been, I'm saying, is it already in some other recommendations?
It's in the first page of our recommendations.
The first page
Yeah,
of
it
the,
ended up in 2 places for some reason.
okay, so I'm going to take this 9 out,
Yeah.
okay? All right, that's only because it's already somewhere
Somewhere on
else.
Page 1, yeah.
Okay, so now we're over to number 12. Review the 2011 campus climate study as a basis for understanding first-person points of view. I don't know what more we're going to do with that. I don't know who you want, this was yours, Delorme, to review it. It's online now. We want the person who authored it to be recognized by university. Okay, so I'm going to take that one out. 13, engage faculty, senate, campus staff, and interested student leaders in the development of a campus climate plan of action. Let me just see something. We have, yeah, I don't know. What do you all think? I was thinking of campus climate studies. That's one of our recommendations, that they be done periodically, right? But this is a campus climate plan. Wouldn't that be with the diversity office? That's their person's job.
I agree.
Get the plan.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah.
I feel like where we're heading is taking Rona's suggestion, fleshing that out, and creating kind of subcomponents to that, and this would be one of those subcomponents.
we don't have her description yet.
I know.
And it'd be nice to get that, because I just don't want to,
Yeah.
So why don't we hold 13 in abeyance till we get her description? And if we find that that needs to be supplemented with this, we can add it. Is that all right?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to let me just make a note, wait on,
And I just like the
Numbers.
phrasing, plan of action, because it's that idea that we actually have to act on the thing that we're researching,
Got it.
you know?
14, throughout the year, the campus should maintain a published website and calendar that reaffirms campus pride and its diversity.
I think that also would fall under the diversity office.
That would, again, things that come under the diversity office, I mean, that would be a responsibility. I'm going to, again, bracket that as one of the activity. The Campus Climate Committee model should be employed and expanded to include an opportunity for every member of administration, faculty, staff, and student leadership to rotate through the committee as a contributing member.
I think that's another weight, I think that's another weight for Rona's recommendations to see how it's established, the office.
Here we go. 16, all administrators, faculty, staff, and students should be provided a handbook and a link to a video exercise that introduces and allows for the practice of recognizing and interrupting prejudice in a variety of campus settings, housing, classrooms, general socialization. Again, diversity, yes, Peter.
So is this maybe like a piece that would fit into the orientation process? Because that's kind of how I'd imagine it. At the orientation, you get the pamphlet and the link and stuff.
Well, what do you want to do with it? What are we saying?
I would say orientation.
Gabriella.
I'm just not sure how enforceable that is, you know, with giving students a pamphlet or a website, because you just don't know if they're going to do it. So I think maybe include it, I think we've talked about this before, just in person, like these sort of orientations, but to go on face-to-face, not necessarily on paper or a link. Or it could be there, but.
Okay, so what's your pleasure here? Tony?
I think we keep it. We have a variety of training that's both online and in person for the entire campus community. And so I think that there are ways to incorporate the ideal behind it.
So I'm going to, again, bracket this as part of this whole package that might go under the kinds of things that the diversity office might do.
It feels like it fits in that training thing that you just, one of the recommendations we just did a few minutes ago. The
And-
training, and we listed students, staff, administrators.
Okay, and that would have been, I don't see it. It was probably under the earlier recommendations, not the ones we've done today.
It was something you were writing down. You said, I'm writing it down.
I don't think so. So what do we want to do with number 16? Put it under training, and what do we?
Yeah, I think so. It's a skill set.
See if you can find, but under under where?
Yeah.
Under one of our earlier recommendations?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, do you want to include it in it, meaning add it just as another number under the other ones? What? I'm trying-
I'm sorry. I figured it out.
Go ahead.
So it was number 9 that we changed. You were writing notes on number 9, which is actually is on page 1.
Yes,
So
but I
that's-
crossed it out.
Yeah, that's number 4 on page 1. And under that, you were listing faculty, staff, transfer students.
Okay, so your page 1, what are you talking about? You're talking
Page
about
one-
our first,
Yeah,
our
our-
revised recommendations?
Page 1 of the initial recommendations we
Yes.
had.
Okay.
Yeah, there was this one, create a sustainable campus-wide diversity education program.
Okay, are you looking at the revised ones?
I'm looking at the original ones,
Well,
sorry.
you gotta look at the revised, because
Okay.
revised, there is link faculty engagement and diversity, okay. Create a sustainable diversity education program campus-wide for faculty, staff, and administrators.
Yes, that's it.
Okay, so what do you want to do with number 16?
I want to put it in there.
So you want to add it as another recommendation?
I want to include it in what you just said.
Okay.
It's part of it.
All right, I got you now. I'm good. Add.
And I agree,
to
because diversity,
number 2.
learning to appreciate diversity is very different from learning the skills of interrupting prejudice.
Okay, I got it. And we'll add it to number 2. We'll add it to number 1 on our first recommendations, okay?
Thank you.
Great, I'm sorry, I was kind of thick
No,
on
I'm
that.
sorry, I got the old
Number
one.
17, rules of discourse in the, yes, Bernadette.
Yes, I've been thinking about the previous 3, 13, 14, 15, where
Yes.
we were thinking about waiting to see what Rona came up with. There might be value in emailing to her in advance the ones that we are thinking about, so that she can consider them beforehand.
It's an excellent suggestion. I've just written it down, and I will see that that happens tomorrow. Thank you. Excellent. 17, rules of discourse in the classroom should be established that promote civility, discernment, reasoning, and spirited debate, absent personal dimensions that demean, disrespect, or deny the perspective of all parties. Now, here we are in the classroom. We're telling people how to, you talk, say what you want to say here. Go ahead.
We're talking about best practices in civility, and we know civility is not working right now. So the school needs to establish, I think, some basic ground rules about discourse in the classroom.
You
They're
academics, what do you, how do you
They're
feel
already
about this?
there, so I don't think it's an issue of having to establish new ones, but I think it's kind of like the reporting. The information isn't getting out there. So I think it probably has more to do with conveying than it does actually
I want to hear
developing
more,
something new.
more from faculty. Are the rules of discourse in the classroom? Are they- Let me hear from faculty first. Ellen, Marcos, Chris, come on, what's happening in the classroom? And then I'll hear from the student's perspective. Let's go. Go ahead.
Okay, first of all, I think Linda's right that there are some things that are already kind of in place and written down. I think this is a tricky one, and I definitely agree with the spirit of this recommendation. I think that the problem could be in implementation, because I think that there are probably people in their classroom that outsiders may perceive that there isn't respect and, in terms of the things that you write, but from their perspective, they may see themselves as engaging in a respectful discourse. So I think that's actually one of the issues to be kind of grappled with there. And I don't have an answer for this because I don't necessarily know how to get everybody on, at least getting close to the same page about how to interpret what respectful discourse means. I do think, however, that this recommendation, what I would like to see is if we're talking about having, with a first-year experience course and also with having a, diversity requirement course, that there be some consideration for this recommendation in terms of what's kind of written into some of the expectations of what we hope to get out of such courses. So for a first-year requirement course, for example.
So what's your recommendation, if any? What are you saying?
I don't know. I'm actually going to kind of back out of saying a recommendation just
All
because
right.
I think that the issue is a little bit tangly.
Okay, Michael,
My recommendation is that we scrap it, and I'll tell you why.
okay?
A faculty member should be responsible for the environment within their classroom. So this sounds like something that would be on a green sheet. It doesn't sound like something that the institution establishes in quite that way.
Okay.
Now,
All right, got 30
okay,
more
that's my
seconds.
recommendation
Okay.
anyway.
Anybody else on this one? Gary and then Linda.
Well, I just wanted to, never mind, I was letting it go.
Okay, Linda.
For anyone interested, if they look on the Senate website, it's SO 113, and it's very descriptive about things like providing an environment where diversity is viewed broadly, and it includes all the, what would be in abroad, actively recruiting, ensuring this
Okay,
and that and the other.
and
It's
what
all
is
there.
that now? That
This
is,
is a Senate document, a policy that was signed by President Corrett a number of years ago.
okay, so Ellen,
So it's a standing policy.
got it.
But I do think there's a problem with things getting out. Yes.
Yeah, I actually, thank you for sending that out, Linda. And I don't think that's strong enough, actually. I don't agree with just scrapping this one. I would recommend actually to not only have it in classroom, but even beyond the classroom too. There is some initiative within, I can't remember which unit in student affairs, of creating some kind of civility values statement that everybody actually signs on to on campus. And it's not, I think that the idea at this point is for students, but I could see that statement being adopted by faculty, staff, and administrators and become more of a cultural shift on campus. And I agree with Dorme that even with that, it's not working.
No, it's not.
All right, Tony and
I've
then
been in
Gary.
the classroom.
Okay.
Tony and then Gary.
I would say that it definitely, when you talk about the classroom, that's the purview of the faculty member. And I think it's a training issue for faculty and a reminder of what civil discourse is all about, and to help create the climate that allows for people to learn how to agree to disagree, because that's not there in many cases.
So what's your recommendation?
My recommendation is that we create, there's got to be, and I don't know what San Jose has on the campus, but there typically is a center for effective teaching and learning, and I'll throw that out. Okay, and that's where the training should come to the faculty, and I would say utilize that
Okay.
that
Somebody want to give me some language real quick?
Center for Faculty Development,
Okay, that's what I'm looking
And somebody would-
develop training.
Say keep going, that's a way.
That's all right, the Center for Faculty
That the Center
Development.
for Faculty Development
Mhm.
provide training for faculty.
Mhm.
That would be pretty extensive.
Around the areas of classroom management, open
Well,
discourse,
there
things of
you
that
go.
nature.
Well, I'd like to normalize language, so I'd like to keep the language.
Yeah.
The rules of discourse. Okay? All right, so I'll add that language to it. Can we move on? All right, okay. 18, any publication of opinions that challenge the culture, customs, practices, et cetera, of another culture should be balanced with a counter-opinion that promotes a campus best practice of discernment, reasoning, and debate. I'm not sure what that means, because I don't know who should do what. Go ahead, Michael.
But that's kind of my point. My concern is that we get into trying to, and I understand what we're trying to do, but I get concerned we try to micromanage behavior. Because on the one hand, we just got through talking about rules of discourse, but this is a panel to discuss diversity. And the reality is, those rules are diverse as well with respect to culture, ethnicity, et cetera. So are we talking about your idea of this? I've been in heated discussion where people think we're fighting, and then we go out to lunch afterwards. People are shocked.
So,
Anyway,
what is your view on 18? You want to scrap it, go forward, change the wording? What do you want to do?
I'm open to changing the wording, and if not, then scrapping it. Because
Okay.
again, I get concerned.
Okay,
about
other, Gary?
I just want to say that as a student of color, my experiences on this campus are very widely. I've had very positive experiences and negative experiences. I personally can't say that I've experienced microaggressions, were necessarily directed at me, maybe directed at, the situation of African Americans as a whole, but I didn't necessarily feel disrespected. But as far as the topic of microaggressions goes, like I said, I've had people express to me that these have happened. Obviously, we've had them express to our task force. So clearly, these microaggressions are an issue that need to be targeted. As far as trying to micromanage the classroom, I'm neutral on that. But I just think that that these microaggressions need to be addressed and handled.
So 18, but I'm against this one only because it's too nebulous. It just says any publication. I mean, we got a whole free speech thing going on here. I understand the concerns about hate speech, but it says should be balanced. I mean, so I just don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think maybe an area that we can focus on is the trainings that we want to do, and the nature of the training. So as we look at these recommendations, we can think about that.
Part of being a student is also experiencing the real world. You hear these opinions, and then you're going to hear stuff that doesn't please you, and people don't come running to your rescue to give a counter opinion. I mean, that's kind of what we're trying to train people to do. What do we want to do? My view is we scrap this one because it just doesn't have it.
I think we need to look at the language when we're talking about recommendations that are supposed to address microaggressions. We need to look at the language that we use for these
Well, we
recommendations.
already did that.
Number 18 is saying.
18 isn't talking about microaggressions.
Well, it seemed like it was as far
No,
as.
it says publication of opinions
Oh.
that challenge,
That
and I don't.
microaggression too in newspapers?
Right, but who's supposed to be responding?
I mean, I'm not for
I don't
or
understand.
against this recommendation. I'm just saying.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, I just don't, while I appreciate the spirit of it, I don't see how you could enforce it. First of all, if you're talking about publications, if you're publishing something in a journal, that's between you and the journal. And if you're publishing something in the newspaper, that's between you and the newspaper. How would the university enforce that? I just don't see how it would be something that the university could
Yeah, well, I
enforce to
think
say,
Delorme's-
if you're publishing something,
No,
that there has to be another publication or something that would come
No,
out
I-
that
I-
would counterbalance it.
But I get it, and I get what you're saying, that, when you see something, you read something that's very hateful, then there should be some sort of a response, but you can't mandate that. I don't think you can. I mean, yes.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's too amorphous. I think we should just eliminate it.
Okay, or consensus, all right, we'll move on that one. Number 20, evaluate current efforts or planned efforts on campus to minimize duplication of efforts. There's a lot of efforts in that sentence.
Sorry about that,
And we're doing that with our
I think that was
recommendations
a
too.
late at night event.
So part of that has to do with Linda. By the way, I have two thank yous right now, and I'm forgive me for not doing it sooner. First of all, thank you to Marcos, because it was Marcos who suggested having our speaker come today.
Yeah.
And I got your email, then we just jumped on it, and thank you. Thank you. Thank you to Linda, because Linda sent us all of these website links to all these various policies, because I'm trying to get a handle on what's going on here. And I counted 12 different websites that you gave us that have to do with these kinds of issues. 12, right? So there's a lot. So this gets back to Evaluate current planned efforts on campus to minimize duplication of efforts. So I don't know what we're supposed to do with that. I mean, that's why we're,
I think it's basically, it was the last time that I brought the printout of the grid that Bill Nance provided on what is already being done on campus. So primarily it was, I think this could be solved by a diversity office, actually, because they would know what's going on campus-wide, and the idea is not to duplicate efforts.
so I'll send that off to Rona as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think actually you don't even need it. I think it would
I
take
agree.
care of it naturally.
I agree. Okay, so I'm going to take out 20. 21, increase events such as showing of undocumented with opportunity for discussion. Encourage faculty to provide extra credit for participation in written or oral presentation reflecting on the experience. Incorporate discussion about the event into class discussions when appropriate. Sounds good to me.
That's good.
What do faculty think? Chris?
I agree with this one. The only part that I am a little iffy on is the part about the extra credit.
It says encourage.
You know,
It says
yeah.
encourage,
They
not
don't have to.
require.
Yeah.
Encourage.
Want to emphasize that.
All
Yeah,
right, so-
I appreciate that.
but-
I just am a little, I would, personally, I would take it out, but I will support this recommendation, but I would.
All right, how many of you wanted to keep the extra credit part in? Anybody wants it in? Students want it in. Okay, makes sense to me. All right, and,
I didn't say how much extra credit.
yes, Rick.
I said extra credit.
Right, Rick?
Yeah, I definitely defer to the NOAA faculty on this issue. However, that's a little bit of honey, and I figure sometimes when you get folks to go, you have to give a little bit of honey. So I understand exactly. I see none of the faculty's heads come up, but I can
All right.
understand where you are.
Okay, and by the way, I just think things like this have a major impact on campus climate. I mean, that's what we're talking about here, so I think this is a good, all right? So 21 is in. 22, expand opportunities for student participation in leadership today.
What is leadership today?
Meaning that there are not, you want more, it available to more students? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Because right now it's not. Ellen?
Can I add, instead of opportunities, put some resource like money, because it costs a lot of money.
I'm assuming that when you expand opportunities, it goes with money, but if we want to be more explicit, that'd be great.
And I think expand opportunities for student, I mean, come on, what do we mean? We want to increase student participation in leadership today. And to do that, you got to have money.
That's
Ma-
fine.
Is that cool?
No
I mean, I want to just,
Just a question, because this leadership today is capitalized. Is that the name of a
That's
program?
the name
Yes.
of the
That's the
program
Yeah,
that
we
was
talked about
described
that.
by Housing and other people.
Okay.
That's been very, very successful.
so are you okay with the
And
wording?
Diana can address that.
Are you okay with the wording, increase student participation in leadership today? And with that comes the money. You got to have the money.
How about if we say with programs such as Leadership for the Day? Because there are going to be a lot of other programs, but that's an example of one.
I'm not sure I follow. I mean,
No, I
her
actually
specifically
do want
is this
that to be
program
specific.
that
Yeah.
Diana, I remember
Because
you're
it
big
has
on this.
proven efficacy.
Hold on. Diana and then Gary.
Okay, so to be more specific, I would say to increase it to 2 times a year instead of just once a year. That way, there's 2 opportunities, and that's increasing it for more than just
I would
one.
actually, the only reason I would be concerned about that is I would want to limit it that much. I would actually, I'm not talking about just numbers of times, I'm talking about numbers of students who actually participate.
But
So
the-
it's actually both. It could be times, but it also is number of students.
The reason why they limit it to, say, 40 students is because it's harder for
It's in-
people to share when it's more than 40
Oh, no,
students.
That's not
Then
what
there
yours.
could be 2 sections of 40. See what I mean? 2
So then
different
that would
parallel?
be 2 times.
Yeah, but
of
going on
leadership
at the
today.
same time of year.
Exactly.
So in other words, you have a 40 group and a 40 group, but they're being funded.
Twice a year, so
And
now
it's-
you have 160 instead of 80.
And it's twice a year. So you got 40 and 40 and then 40 and 40.
And they would be in groups no larger than 40, whatever's recommended that way.
Okay, so right now, we're
Yeah.
saying increase the number of students that participate in Leadership Today.
Yeah.
That's what we're saying. Now, how they formulate that, it's up to
Okay.
them.
Well,
Yeah.
I would want to be more descriptive just because
So
then
give-
it would guarantee that there'll be
Okay.
at least 2 times because I just don't know how they'll increase it.
All right, so go ahead, give me some language.
So I would like to increase
The student participation and what else?
to
Frequency.
frequency to at least 2 times a year.
Yeah, so
I'm not-
twice a year.
Give me the whole wording.
So
It's not making sense.
expand opportunities for student participation.
We're saying increase student participation. That's how we're going to
Right,
change it.
by holding leadership today, what do they call them, workshops?
It's
Events,
retreat.
whatever, retreats.
Retreat, go
ahead.
Leadership Today retreats
Go ahead.
at least twice a year.
something
Okay.
like that. Mhm.
All right, got it.
Thank you.
Before we move on,
Yes.
I want to go back to Anthony's because.
I'm sorry, which one are we
I
on?
had a
Oh,
comment.
same
Well,
one?
his the way he worded programs like, because I'm aware of other things and other models, and to be quite frank, the African American and Chicano Latino task forces did put forward recommendations for their version of one. So I don't like the notion that there's only one way to do things, and that's what we should recommend. So I'm comfortable with the idea that we increase opportunities for students to participate in things like, but just because folks just know one song, I don't want to be wedded to the single song.
All right, Gary.
Yeah, definitely related to both of Anthony Ross' comments and Michael Randall's. I have been a student leader on this campus for 4 years now. I mean, obviously it doesn't compare to you all, but I have never heard of Leadership Today. I've never gone to Leadership Today, and I like to think that I made somewhat of an impact on this campus without going to Leadership Today. Not to attack that program, but if it's something that you strongly feel that is a good program, I say we should support it and others like it. And also, in regard to Leadership Today, I don't know if anyone from my community has even participated in Leadership Today, any of the activists I work with or the people, my friends. So again, we need to either look at improving Leadership Today or improving programs like that.
Okay, let's pick up on it, Chris.
I support the recommendation as it's written, but would like to just recommend an additional recommendation, and that is to have the campus to develop other leadership type programs and then to work on those types of programs as well, because I do agree with the spirit of what's being said. I don't want us to limit, to say that Leadership Today is the only gig in town, the only thing that we can do.
So-
I think that we should expand it, but I do
All
think
right,
we need to.
so I have one recommendation. It says increase student participation in Leadership Today by holding retreats, Leadership Today retreats at least twice a year. That's one recommendation. Now I'm hearing another one that says develop leadership programs.
Or
Right.
support.
Anthony, how would you phrase it?
Support,
Or that-
develop,
well-
what do you, how? Come on, come on.
I think what he was saying, I think my request would be that that sentence stays as is, and then add a sentence to the same recommendation about additional programs. Because I do think Leadership Today, one of the reasons when you say, Gary, you haven't, it's because it's so small. And the whole idea is to have more students involved. It's a pretty well accepted, I've heard lots of positive feedback from students, wouldn't that be accurate? That it's transformative for them. So we know that already, but that statement was never meant to be exclusive. So
All right, so if we
okay.
add language, we can write and after we have increased the retreats at least twice a year and develop more leadership training programs for.
Leadership and diversity training programs for students.
I like it.
All right, training
Is that okay?
programs for students. I got it. All right, that'll go on the end of 22. All right?
One more thing on
Yes.
I don't know if this is a problem, but by changing the language to increasing the retreats and removing the word opportunities, we are not really addressing the resources that students might need to participate in these programs. Is that an issue?
It is, you do need to say something about resources, because here, it happens a lot on campuses when there are limited resources. Everybody thinks it's a great idea, but then the next thing will be say there's no money. So you really, it's
Well-
important to say that, financial resources be,
How about just provide funding for the
okay, great,
Okay.
whatever
Provide
works.
funding.
It's been a long day,
All right,
so,
okay.
yeah.
And provide funding. Got it. Okay, 23, create a first, we already did that one. 24 we did. 25, reestablish campus climate committee.
Done. That's under.
So that's under the, I'm taking it out. Conduct an updated diversity study. We have that. Explore mandatory act. We did that. Reestablish a broad and diverse campus task force meets on a regular basis.
That wasn't done.
No, it wasn't.
And I'd like to speak to
So
that.
there's the
actually.
last one. Let me just read it again so everyone hears it. Reestablish a broad and diverse campus community task force, which meets on a regular basis. Rick.
So to speak to that, so it was interesting. I actually did a search to see anywhere where we had the word community. We've really instantly focused on what goes in, what's happening on the campus. However, what is the role of the community in coming back and involving itself? It's such, the community itself is such an integral part, the campus is such an integral part of the community. For a long time, under Corrett and under other presidents, there were campus community task force. I'm not aware if anything as such exists today. And does anyone, no? Oh.
Rick, what was the purpose of the task force?
Well, the purpose of the task force, so community members can raise concerns, and you can basically be able to talk about things and the campus's impact on, the campus's impact on the community. But, so for example, if you're having an issue on the campus and the community folks knew about it, they had the ability to give the input and vice versa. And I think if we have a task force that's combining both, hopefully we can use the resources in the community to address some of the issues that are occurring on campus and vice versa.
All right. And, yeah, okay, was that I'm looking at the Campus Climate Advisory Committee? Was that what you're talking about?
The Campus Climate
This is under
Advisory
Correct?
Committee, I believe, was an internal committee. They had President Correct had it was a campus community task force. They met quarterly to talk about issues that were occurring on campus and to receive community input.
Yeah, I look back at during his tenure, and I saw the 3 ethnic community advisory councils, and they had community members attached to them.
Yeah,
And
so
then
there was
that-
there was an
that's how they
African American, a Latino,
That's
and
And
an Asian
Asian,
American community.
They were
I don't
called
know. Yeah,
community
So, yeah,
advisory councils that
Yes, yeah.
reported to the president.
That's the ones I'm
Right.
talking about.
And there, but,
Advisory council's different.
and it was very interesting because I noticed on the African American Community Advisory Council, there was only 1 community member on there.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was it.
Well, those are the ones I was talking
So,
about. Those are the ones
as
that
opposed to-
disappeared.
So, okay, so let's talk about this. So, establish or reestablish a broad and diverse campus community task force.
I don't know if task force is the right
So-
word.
Advisory
So
to
here
the
we're getting
Yeah.
advisory council. I think you should add something about to whom this council will report.
Advisory to the president, because that's a typical, I would say, a typical committee or council that would be, that would have and discuss town-gown relationships, so.
Correct.
Okay, so that's going back to, that's the way it was in 1998. Okay, they report directly to the president. They would meet and say what's going on. All right? Okay, we have 20 minutes left, and we still have to look at our recommendations that I took all of your edits, put them all together, and emailed them to you all from our first talk. And Marcos had 2. We've already taken care of one of his additional ones. So I emailed you on, Dorothy did, on March 24th with the edited recommendations from our March 20th task force meeting. And I'm going to look at page 1, number 4, under faculty, administration, and staff. And I have it in italics. It says, campus administration should reevaluate its role and relationship with faculty and students. Delorme, you were to reword that.
I did.
All right, so
This is what I said.
use the microphone, please.
Okay. The roles and relationship between administration, faculty, staff, and students regarding bias and discrimination and the promotion of the value of diversity should be clearly articulated and accessible to all.
Read it again, please.
Okay? The roles and relationships between administration, faculty, staff, and students regarding bias, discrimination, and the promotion of the value of diversity should be clearly articulated and accessible to all.
Comments? How do you envision that being articulated?
In writing on a web page.
Well, I think that should be in there. I
Yeah.
think you should write
Okay.
that she wants it on a web page in writing.
The,
Go ahead,
the
Mark.
thing I'm not clear on is what the focus is in this. So the roles and,
So that's more of a statement than an action. That's where
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Mhm.
understand.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm saying-
I'm
I'm
feeling
saying they
too
sh-
nebulous right now, and I'm trying to get it.
Okay. What I experience here is that there's a lack of clarity between a lot of people that are working here and they're attending this school with regard to bias and diversity and discrimination. People don't know what the roles are. They don't know who does what, when, where, why, and who's promoting what, and who's responsible for what. And that's just not clear. And so all I want you to do is articulate that. If it starts with the president, that he's the one who's the key holder, then it should say that, okay? If the faculty are participating in this kind of a way, then it should say that. If the staff is doing it, it should say that. And what is expected of students, it should also say that.
so when
All right.
when you say roles and responsibilities, you're referring to addressing diversity issues.
Right.
Okay, so I have some language. So what about, we start out, clearly define the roles and responsibilities. of administration, faculty, and staff, I don't know if it's about students or not, with respect to, I don't know if the promotion of diversity.
Mhm.
But then they go into the whole campus climate, we're about to, like, that sounds like we kind of flushed that out. Well, not flushed that out.
Can't hear you, Mike.
I said that sounds like some of the stuff that would get folded under the diversity office, or as we're working on that.
I don't have a problem with that. I was asked to do this before we had
Yeah,
this conversation
that's what I know,
today.
yeah, this was
Okay?
before we had the conversation.
So is this with the word clearly defined, the roles and responsibilities? Do you want me to send that on to
Yes.
Rona and say, look at this as well and see if this fits into?
Exactly.
Okay, all right. May I use your
Yeah,
paper here?
no problem.
Okay, so this one, sent to Rona. Okay, I'll send it on
Okay.
and then we'll see what happens, all right? The next one that we were to look at was residential life, number 2. Hold for further consideration, and here it is. Decrease the RA, the ALRA, and the the ALRC and the LRC student ratios, fewer students per staff person. We wanted to talk about that some more. Right now, it was what, 1 to 50 for RAs to, I don't know. So my notion was that that number, that just needs to change. There need to be a fewer number of students assigned to each one. Rick?
Well, you know, just when we started off the meeting, you started out talking about the personnel action that had occurred and that we couldn't talk about it. And, you know, the newspapers reported that it was due to incidents related to alcohol. So clearly there's probably something wrong with the ratio that's there if there's not proper supervision. And I'm just insinuating what could have occurred.
I mean, 18 people.
That's
Yeah,
18 people. So I'm just relating it to that situation. And when the judge had made the recommendation, it was saying, well, clearly there was a problem. So clearly there's a problem. So I think there needs to be an increase in the ratio of RAs, ALRCs, and LRCs to student ratio, and I think it's evidenced by what occurred today.
So I you know, in my recommendation, I didn't put a number, because I don't want to tell the, you know, you have to put these many, but I just believe that ratio is not working. Yes.
And I want to be clear, and Rick, I want to help you out there, because the action that took place today was about a personnel action, and so it was involving staff. It did not involve students that would be affected by this. So I think there's a difference there. Because if I heard you correctly, you were concerned about the ratio of the staff members to the number of students on the hall, and then you related it to the action taken today.
The action taken today.
But that was a personnel action as it related to staff, and didn't have anything to do
No,
with
there
what we're
was,
talking
they're
about.
RAs, and they're students, and they're also hired by the
Right.
university. But they are students.
they're both.
I'm sorry, I'm not focusing here. So, Linda, you said something? Go ahead.
He said that they're staff, not students. They're actually students hired by the university to be RAs.
Well, they're student staff, paraprofessionals, but yeah, they were acting in their capacity as staff, and that's why that's why the personnel action was allegedly taken today.
Correct.
So
That's
they were
true.
not RAs, ALRCs, or LRCs?
They were.
Yeah, so that's exactly the point
Okay,
that I'm
all right,
making.
so let's talk about what we want to do. My recommendation is there needs to be a change, and I'm not giving a number, I'm not telling what they ought to do, but we are giving a direction saying there need to be fewer students with the staffers. Michael, and
I'd like to
then,
support that just as is without the number.
right, there's no number.
No, I'm supporting that.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Can we move on?
I
Yes.
just want to say that I know that we aren't like putting numbers on things, but I just want to make the point that I believe either the ALRCs or the RLCs, one of those positions, they actually live in the dorms too. So if we're talking about increasing their number, which I'm hoping we are, we're not talking about firing RAs or then well, I mean, it's not up to us to implement it, but,
right.
you know, the university will have to come up with housing for them.
Right.
But
That's up to them.
Yep.
But if we want to solve the problem.
Yeah, no, I'm just making a
Exactly,
point.
Gotcha. All right, yes. Margo?
Just one note is that ALRCs, for example, report to LRCs, and so
Right.
there's a concern about those ratios too, so there may just want to be a little clarification in the wording. Because we're also talking about the number of ALRCs reporting to LRCs, the number of ARs reporting to LRCs, you know?
Yeah, so,
It's great.
All
It's
right,
great.
we'll
I
just-
just want that
Ellen?
clarity.
just to clarify, it should be a RLC, that's Assistant Res Life Coordinator, and the
A-
Assistant Res Life Coordinators are graduate assistants. So they're also
let me get the
students.
acronym right. So we got RAs.
RAs.
Go ahead, then.
ARLC.
ARLC.
And RLC.
And RLC. Thank you.
And so my understanding is RLCs are not students, the other two are students.
Okay. All right. Okay, number 4 on the same page.
Bernadette has a question?
Yes.
In terms of the clarification that was suggested, because it isn't just fewer students per staff person, it's fewer students per staff person and fewer of the upper level staff persons overseeing other staff persons.
I got
So
you.
it's more supervisors, higher ratio of supervisors to subordinates.
That's better.
All right, I got it. Okay, thank you. I got it.
I'm actually,
Got to keep moving.
I'm somewhat concerned, because are we also talking about increasing the roles of the ARLCs and the RLCs? Because the RAs, they're responsible for most of the happenings in the dorms, so.
This is not roles, this is just numbers right now. So all we're talking about is ratios on this one, okay? So I want to move on. Number 4, I reworded it, and, you know, I'm not going to fight y'all on it. If y'all don't want it, it's fine, but it's reworded as follows. Ensure that residential life staff who most frequently interact with students, including but not limited to RAs, are aware of and sensitive to the perceived racial identities of the residents. Not ask them to go in and ask you, what are you? But if they perceive, for example, the student in the case that brought this to the forefront was the only black student in that suite, we want those working, at least as I want them, to be aware of that and sensitive to that, so that to ensure that this person is not unduly isolated. That was my whole thing. So that's why I put perceived. I mean, you don't have to go ask anybody anything, but if you see that there's one Asian American student and that's it, then you're aware of it. And I want to, you know. Anyway, so that's the wording. Tell me what you want to do, and I'll do it. Okay, silence.
Do you want to add sorry.
That's all right.
Do you
No,
wanna-
silence means
Do you want
agreement.
to add self-identified in addition? So perceived and self-identified?
Sure, and/or self-identified.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay? And/or self. Okay. All right. We have a new one on page 3. This was Marcos. The RLC and this is number 12 on the ones I sent out. The RLC and the ARLC job requirements include demonstrated knowledge, skill, and experience working with diverse students. I think that's terrific. That's mine.
Thank you.
Okay, are we good? Everybody's? All right. So, we are finished. I will rewrite all these recommendations that we've gone through today. I'll send them out to you with your edits for your approval. Get back to me as quickly as you can if you have any concern on them. Hold on one second. And then at our final meeting, you will have the final recommendations, and we will have finished our work. Now, I have some raised hands here. We have exactly 7 minutes, so we have some time.
10 seconds here at the very
Go
bottom.
right
You
ahead.
have G curriculum, a new one. The university should institute a diversity course requirement. Did we want to review that one or?
I'm sorry. We did it.
Okay.
We did that. I'm sure we did.
Judge Cordell?
Yes.
Are we, me and Linda are going to work on that first year
That's
experience
right.
course one, and you're going to send it out after Tuesday then?
That's right.
Cool.
I'm going to wait on you all. All right, so you'll get that to me on Tuesday. And Dr. Gulalani will get me hers on Monday. So by midweek, you'll have all the new edited, you'll have the whole package. I'm going to send you everything, all right? Garrett?
I just wanted to say that I still wanted to make a recommendation, so hopefully there will be time to add my last recommendation in there along
You
with
have a
other edits.
recommendation?
Yes, I have a recommendation.
All right, go ahead, Gary.
Well, you want it right now?
Gary, we're wrapping up.
Okay,
Go
well,
right ahead.
I would like for there to be resource and success centers that specifically target the underrepresented minority students with very poor graduation rates.
Okay, so say it again for us. So I have to get some wording here, so go ahead. Just say it.
Resource and success centers, which specifically
So there are resource centers and success centers. Are they?
Student success center.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
student
I'm
resource
sorry,
and success
ma'am.
centers, which would specifically target underrepresented minority students
Success.
with awful graduation rates, wording, whatever.
Success centers. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to do it again. We just gotta go through it. So, student resource success centers.
No, student resource and success centers, they're actually separate things.
No, they're
No, they're
one.
not. He's saying they're
Oh,
one.
okay.
A resource and success, well, resources for success, but resource and success center. So resource and success center,
Is it one center, Gary?
yes.
All right,
it's-
go right ahead.
which specifically targets underrepresented minority students
Mm-hmm.
with low graduation rates.
Instead of targets, how about supports?
Yes.
All right, and to support. Do you have a vision of who supervises the center?
The Office
where-
of Diversity that we want to implement.
All right. Is this, okay, that's fine. Should I send this to Rona or not?
Yes.
Okay,
You got a couple hands.
all right. All right, Tony?
I just had a question. Does that not closely align itself with the first one we started out with on the graduation rates earlier, with the WASC report?
It should.
Because you had mentioned that, and so I want us to be able to couple those two somehow, because we did mention that earlier on in our discussions tonight,
Right, and,
because it's
Second.
specifically low graduation rates.
Yeah, in my vision, it definitely relates.
yeah, and, okay, so that was mine on number 4, undertake a study to determine why graduation rates, that was the study part.
Try to couple that recommendation to Gary's.
So why don't we just put that as another recommendation right under there, and then, you know, create a student resource and success center to support underrepresented students with low graduation rates, something like that.
And what I'd like to
Gary,
add
is that all
to-
right?
Sounds great.
And I'd like to add, conduct outreach too, because that's one of the issues, that students don't know these resources exist. So conduct outreach to and support.
I'm going to have to ask you 1 second to just give me the wording. All right, so we're going to add to number 4. Okay, so do you want that to be a part of his, to create the center and,
conduct outreach to and support. So you're just adding and conduct outreach to and support.
all right? All right,
Okay,
Mike.
thank you. I'm starting to feel like that person sent the letter. All right, I just want to say I want to work with Linda and Deanna on the first year experience draft.
Sure.
And I just want to point a clarification on Marco's, the RLC and ARLC job requirements should include demonstrated knowledge, skills, blah, blah. But the point I'm trying to make is, so let's play this out. I'm a freshman, I come here from Kentucky or some, what have you. I don't get an on-campus job. Where's the expectation that the ability to accumulate this come from? And so, unless we can answer it, I think it's fundamental.
Well, if I'm answering, I'm going to say, figure it out. That's what I'm going to say. And I know of instances where people had similar experiences, came here, and were like fish out of water trying to supervise people that they had no idea how to work with. And so I'm sorry, too bad.
Rick?
And I have to really back Marcus up on that, because if you come here, you're a freshman, you want to be an RA in the dorm, just like any other job, you should know what the job requirements are and go out and get them. And if you refuse to affiliate or work with other people of color, I do not want you supervising any other child on this campus. So that's, I have to say, figure it out. Go get the requisite requirements in order to be an RA.
You usually don't know it until you get ready to apply. I'm just saying
Well,
that.
you know, part of growing up, man. Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Chris.
I understand that. I think that's something, though, that, you know, if you're looking at that from a freshman, part of what their experience is going to be is limited compared to what faculty or staff would be. So to me, I would say, if I was a freshman in that position, I wanted to do that, I would put things on my resume like, I took such and such class that directly addressed diversity, and I did well in that course. I worked at such and such other place on campus, and as part of my work on campus, I worked with a diverse group of people, and this is my supervisor that can vouch for what I have done so far. And I don't really think that we have the highest set of expectations for somebody who's 19 in terms of a long work history, but I think those are the types of things that could actually be, requirements, or excuse, not requirements, but things that could, be on a student's resume that could count as part of their diversity training.
Okay, so working at the bookstore, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's what I'm getting
yeah,
at.
it could-
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so it is 7:20, hold on. It is 7:30 on the dot. Our meeting is over. Yes.
Just one
Marcos.
question on process. So you're going to get us all these, there's going to be
By
some
next
back and
week.
forth
Yeah.
email? Is that cool?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I'm kind of playing this by ear right now. Our next meeting, our last meeting is April 17th. Hopefully, that's the meeting where I'm going to give you these documents and we're done. So
Okay.
I think you're right that I'll get you something midweek once I get everything from Linda, Diana, and Michael. Put all these edits in, send everything out midweek. We'll go back and forth. I don't want any new recommendations. We're done.
Yes.
All right? And then we'll, by the time we're ready to meet, I should have the final document. I will have it ready for you.
So all
And it's
this,
not going to be a long meeting. We're not going to be 2
Yeah.
hours here on the last meeting.
so all this should expect to read those carefully and provide feedback and get reply alls.
Yes, and I'll do an email that says that.
Yeah.
Okay?
Cool.
All right?
In a timely manner.
Oh, yeah, because I'm the one putting all this together. All right? Thank you all so much. It's 7:31. The meeting's adjourned. Done.
Thank you.